Hi everyone, this is Mrs. Coiler. I'm going to talk to you about the second part of the gravity force lab today, and that's the effect of mass on gravity. Last time we took a look at the effect of distance on gravity, and here we're going to look at mass instead. So the first thing you have to do, just like last time, is get your notebook page ready. So you need to have the title, date, page number. Got to update that table of contents, and then write everything out the way that it says to do in the instructions doc that's in Google Classroom. So make sure you get that filled out. All right, so once you're in PhET, we're going to use the same simulation that we used last time, and that's the gravity force lab, the one with the white background. So let's get in there. And we need to make some changes to the default settings. So again, we're going to click on scientific notation in the lower right. And then this also says to move M2 so its center lines up with the 8 meter mark on the ruler. So we're going to keep M1 at 2 meters and we're going to keep M2 at 8 meters. And they're going to stay there for all of the trials. Now we get to look at our data table to figure out, we're going to figure out where the masses need to be or what the masses need to be. So mass 1 looks like starting out, I need to set it at 60 kilograms. There we go. And then mass 2, we're starting pretty low at 100 kilograms. So we need to change that right now. All right, so what we see is 1.15 times 10 to the negative 8th. So we're seeing another times 10 to the negative 8th power. So we've got scientific notation here again. And again, that just means that we're moving that decimal point over. These numbers right now do not look easy to deal with. So we're putting them in this format so that they're a little bit easier for us to graph. All right, so we're looking at mass here. We're figuring out what mass has to do with gravity and force. So we're going to keep going down the data table and changing the masses as we go. So the next row down says we need to set mass 2, at 100. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And mass 2 needs to be at 150. There we go. Okay. So now you're going to do the same thing. You're going to write 2.88 in the column for force on M1 by M2, as well as force on M2 by M1. So you've probably noticed by now something interesting happening with these numbers. Again, we're going to tuck that in the back of our brain, and then we're going to bring it out in our next activity. So for this, once you've gotten all your data, you need to create a line graph. So you're going to have to graph the product of masses on the x-axis. So again, product, we have to think about math class. Product means we're multiplying. So we're going to multiply each of the masses by each other. So you're going to get really big numbers for this, and that's okay. I'm going to post another video on how to set up your graphs for this lab, and it's okay if you get big numbers. You should get big numbers. So we're going to multiply those, and that's going to be what goes on the x-axis, and then force of gravity times 10 to the negative 8th power, and of course we're in newtons, that's going to be on our y-axis. When you're done with that, this lab has more to do than our last one did, because we're now able to summarize both labs together. So you need to fill out the summarize part in your notebook. There are questions in there. Follow those instructions. You need to figure out if each statement is true or false. And then you need to either write it as is. If you think it's true, you're going to write it in your notebook. Or if you think it's false, you're going to correct it to make it true and then write that in your notebook. Then you need to use complete sentences to fill out the explain and apply questions. You need to answer those in your notebook. I will post a picture of what that part of your notebook needs to look like, or you can find that in the instructions, actually. So I'll show you what my notebook looks like so that you can get that all ready to go. I'm going to show you how to make the graph now. All right, here's what our graph needs to look like for the effect of mass on gravity. So one thing I want you to notice over here on the y-axis is that we've got force of gravity. We made sure that we wrote in that we are multiplying those by 10 to the negative 8th. Again, that's scientific notation. It means that we moved the decimal point. And then down on the x-axis, we've got the product of the masses. So one thing that I did here is I did times 10 to the 3rd power. What that means is we moved the decimal point over to make the number bigger. So these were all huge numbers. So I've simplified that here by putting them in scientific notation. So this is really going up by 5,000s. We're starting all the way on the left with 5, but that times 10 to the negative 3 right here means that that's actually 5,000. I just didn't have room to write it that way. So since we were using scientific notation already right here, I thought it would be simpler if we put the x-axis in scientific notation as well. So I just went up 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, and because our data goes up to 50,000. And then on the y-axis, I went up by 0.5s, and make sure you get a title on there. That's how your graph should look like once it's all set up. And then you just graph your values and use that graph to help you understand what we're looking at. I hope you have a great day. Let me know if you have any questions.